It's Wednesday, 18 December. Welcome to the PDB Afternoon Bulletin. Okay, it's the late afternoon bulletin. I'm Mike Baker, your eyes and ears on the world stage. All right, let's get briefed. First, the leader of the rebel opposition that overthrew Syria's Assad regime has announced plans to disband their militant militias and form a new national army as they reportedly work to consolidate their power and, at least on paper, distance themselves from their radical past. Then, the U.S. Justice Department has charged 2 Iranian nationals in connection with a fatal drone strike in Jordan earlier this year that killed 3 U.S. service members and injured dozens more. But first, our afternoon spotlight. We'll begin with an update out of Syria, where the new regime replacing deposed dictator Assad is beginning to take shape. After establishing a transitional government in the immediate wake of Assad's ouster, the rebels are now moving to further consolidate their power and establish institutions that are built to last. On Wednesday, Abu Muhammad al-Jolani, leader of the top rebel group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which is known as HTS, announced that Syria's rebel factions will be disbanded and their fighters will be trained to join a new national army under the direction of the Defense Ministry. The decision to dissolve the rebel groups is largely a strategic play aimed at easing international restrictions on their new transitional government. As we've discussed here on the PDB, HTS, a former arm of al-Qaeda that used to be called the Nusra Front, is a U.S. and EU designated terror organization. While they've since tried to position themselves as moderates, the terror designation and the sanctions that come with it could significantly impede their plans to reform and rebuild Syria. Al-Jolani said Tuesday, quote, "We have to adopt a state mentality, not an opposition mentality," end quote. He called for international sanctions against Damascus to be lifted so refugees displaced by the civil war can return home. Separately, he spoke of the need to restore relations with the UK and US. Despite skepticism in the West about HTS's ability to de-radicalize after their sweeping victory over Assad, leaders in the US and Europe have sought to directly engage with Syria's transitional government. On Monday and Tuesday, officials from France, Germany, and the UK all traveled to Damascus for meetings with the country's new rulers, and officials in the US have also reportedly been in direct contact with HTS leaders. The EU, meanwhile, announced on Tuesday plans to reopen its delegation in Damascus. Western powers are still reticent to lift sanctions, however, with most advocating a wait-and-see approach with regards to HTS and al-Jolani. They hope to see al-Jolani institute more comprehensive reforms to prove the group's rhetoric is actually sincere. For now, al-Jolani appears focused on consolidating the rebels' power. Analysts from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies said in addition to distancing the transitional government from the radical past of the coalition, the move to dissolve the rebel groups serves to swiftly monopolize power in the hands of the state. Al-Jolani has also framed it as a way to build unity among Syria's many ethnic factions. Speaking with leaders from the country's Druze minority on Tuesday, al-Jolani declared that, quote, "Syria must remain united. There must be a social contract between the state and all religions to guarantee social justice," end quote. Now, as an aside, we should also note that to further distance himself from his terrorist past, al-Jolani has recently reverted to going by his birth name, Ahmed al-Shahra. Al-Jolani was his assumed name as an Islamist fighter for al-Qaeda, ties that he claims to have renounced. Last week, the rebels named Mohammed al-Bashir, who previously ran parts of northern Syria on behalf of HTS, as the new caretaker prime minister. But he's only expected to serve in that position until March, when the rebels hope to establish a more permanent government. Coming up, the U.S. Justice Department has charged 2 Iranian nationals in connection with a fatal drone strike in Jordan earlier this year that killed 3 U.S. service members and injured dozens more. I'll be right back. Welcome back to the Afternoon Bulletin. The Justice Department announced charges on Monday against 2 men accused of illegally exporting sensitive technology to Iran, which was used in the deadly January drone attack on a U.S. base in Jordan. The strike killed 3 American soldiers and injured over 40 others, making it the deadliest attack on U.S. forces in the region this year. The DOJ confirmed that the first defendant, a naturalized U.S. citizen employed at a Massachusetts semiconductor firm, was arrested here in the States. Meanwhile, the second defendant, who runs a Tehran-based company linked to Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, was detained in Italy, where U.S. authorities are actively pursuing his extradition. Justice Department officials revealed that FBI specialists traced the drone's navigation system to the Tehran-based company, which allegedly acquired components and technology through the first defendant using a Swiss front company. The charges include violations of U.S. export control laws, with the second defendant also accused of conspiring to provide material support to Iran. Massachusetts top federal prosecutor Joshua Levy emphasized the case's significance, warning that the diversion of American technology into hostile hands is no longer a hypothetical threat. Well, to be fair, it hasn't been a hypothetical threat for decades. Prosecutors allege the second defendant's company maintained deep ties to the Iranian regime and facilitated the Revolutionary Guard Corps' acquisition of advanced navigation systems, an assertion that bolsters the broader narrative of Iran's growing technological capabilities. The one-way attack drone targeted Tower 22, a U.S. logistics base near the volatile Jordan-Syria-Iraq border, housing roughly 350 military personnel at the time of the attack. The U.S. blamed the Islamic resistance in Iraq, that's a web of Iran-backed militias, for the strike. It's important to note that the drone was likely mistaken at the time as it was incoming for an expected U.S. drone returning to the base about the same time, evading detection and blasting the living quarters with devastating impact. Following the attack, the U.S. conducted a wave of retaliatory airstrikes on 85 sites across Iraq and Syria tied to Iran's IRGC and its proxies. While the indictments attempt to hold the pair accountable, they also expose weaknesses in U.S. export control enforcement and emphasize the broader strategic challenges that Washington faces in countering Iran's paramilitary network and regional influence. And that, my friends, is the PDB Afternoon Bulletin, albeit a little bit late, for Wednesday, 18 December. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out to me at pdb@thefirsttv.com. And for those of you pursuing an ad-free lifestyle, well, we're here to help. You can do that just by becoming a premium member of the President's Daily Brief by visiting pdbpremium.com. Couldn't be any simpler. I'm Mike Baker. I'll be back tomorrow. Until then, stay informed, stay safe, stay cool.